seen that one before.
Good song, man.
We've been speaking on different attributes for leadership. And on our travels, Sandy had only been to 48 of the 50 states, and she says she was wanting to go to number 49 and 50, which is North and South Dakota. And the only things we wanted to see in South Dakota was Mount Rushmore with the presidents and Chief Crazy Horse. We figured, okay, you know, at least we got that all taken care of. And driving up to North Dakota was 180 miles to get to the border, and there was absolutely nothing but prairie. And we ran into a whole bunch of sheep one time, and about 20 cows a couple times, and the rest was just nothing, nothing, and more nothing, and more nothing. So we finally got into North Dakota. We pulled this little town, and there's a little museum there, and we took a half hour to see the museum. It's kind of a neat little local small town museum. And we figured it'd be more fun to go over to the Devil's Tower over in Wyoming, even though it was not on the agenda. And we went down to the mammoth pits. They had about 61 mammoth found in a pit down in Hot Springs, South Dakota. Of course, we had a pan for gold, CJ. We were looking for that wealth, you know. And we got a couple little shavers of gold and say we got some gold in the pan. But not enough to write home mom about and say we got newfound wealth. We struck it rich. But we took in a lot of things we didn't really plan on doing. We went back to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and visited her old schoolhouse. And she says, the trailer park's still there. The trailer park I grew up in when you're 4th grade. So we went in there and we took a picture of the trailer that was not her trailer, but at least in their spot where her trailer used to be. So some things changed, some things didn't. I got to Sears Roebuck. I delivered there, set up the shipping department and delivered for Sears Roebuck in Fort Collins, Colorado. And we got in there and we saw construction going on. We drove around, we walked through they had some fancy store we had to walk through. We got in the hallway and some workers are going on and says, what happened to the Sears store? Oh, we bulldozed that down last year. You know, all my old friends and all my old memories gone with the wind. Oh, we're building a super mall here, so that's the story of, you know, this trip. As they call it, progress. But we flew 5,000 miles, we drove about 1,600 miles. And we saw a bunch of things, and it says, okay, I was either going to bring a message today on husband, one wife, or not giving them much wine, and said, well, let's do it for some of the adventures we had, and share with you some of the leadership qualities we can learn from Chief Crazy Horse. And some of these qualities are patience and long-suffering and prayer and generational blessing. We're going to consider these, but these are some of the spiritual lessons we can consider from Crazy Horse and Crazy Noah. Now, of course, long-suffering, the Bible talks about the long-suffering of Noah, that my spirit shall not always strive with man, yet his days shall be how long? 120 years. We don't know if he built the ark over these 120 years, or whether he preached these 120 years, or did both those 120 years, but it was 120 years God held back the floodwaters to give man a chance for repentance. And he put this task of building this huge engineering feat, and one engineer said it was more difficult for Noah to build the ark in his day and age as it was for us to land a man on the moon. So these are some of the areas, but we talk about the long suffering of Noah preaching. And you know, sometimes we grow weary in well-doing. You preach and you wish you had more people there to hear you. And yet, how would you like to preach, Glenn, for 120 years, and the only one you got is your wife and your 3 kids, and their wives, and that's it. You know, that's 8 of us. That would be kind of a feeble ministry, but his ministry was that fruitful. Somebody says, well, how big of a string of fish you hold up? One guy said, well, we had 100 baptisms last year. We had 200. And Noah said, well, after 120 years, I had my family.
Wow, barely.
So we talk about the long suffering of building this huge boat. And when we saw Chief Crazy Horse and the number of years it took and how far they've gotten so far, how much further they have to get along, it's incredible. And it says the only thing we have in parallel in Scripture with Crazy Horse and the family that's building Crazy Horse is Noah's Ark and those endeavors. The Bible tells us in 1 Peter 3:20 and 21, to those who were disobedient long ago, when God patiently, in the days of Noah, while the ark was being built, in it only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water. And this water symbolizes baptism, that now saves you also, not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, the ark wondered what the ark did. The ark actually saved the family. The water is what cleansed the world of its sin. And then he talks about baptism is not going out and taking a shower or bath to remove dirt from the body, but it's the answer of good conscience to Christ through the resurrection, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now in Dakota, we have the Crazy Horse Memorial, and as we were traveling, we came up through Cheyenne and Lusk, Wyoming. And when we were in Lusk, we cut over below Rapid City and visited the Jewel Caves, which wasn't on the agenda. And we went down to the hot springs where the woolly mammoth were and the Columbian mammoth were. And then finally we got up there and panned gold, checked out of there, and finally got up to Mount Rushmore on the next day out. And then we went all the way up there to the North Dakota, right about to here. And then we said, okay, we've seen it, you've been there. And the only thing close was a 7-hour back and forth drive to the Teddy Roosevelt National Park. And we decided not to take a 7-hour back and forth ride up to, because we had to get back to, we decided to take a Devil's Tower, and then back to the reunion that Friday night was our 50th high school class reunion we had to make. But this is the Crazy Horse Memorial. And I knew nothing about this except when I was 17-year-old sitting in a college class. Leif Culver was our professor. He was from Lusk, Wyoming. And when we went through that town, it was a town of like 1,200 people, a little cowboy town. And he talked about how they're building this Crazy Horse statue. And it was begun, I was a year old when I started on this project, 1 year old. And now I'm 17, and this professor of mine is telling us about, they're going to build this big old, carved out of a mountain, and it'll be an Indian on a horse, and full headdress, and you know, and all the gyrations of an Indian. And I kind of pictured a little bit different in my mind until I really saw it. He made them a little more compact. Now we've got two monuments, and this is Crazy Horse as we come into it. Now we've got 2 monuments that are of great importance. One supported by the taxpayers' dollars, National Park. This one's all by free enterprise. You pay $11 a piece, you get into the, or $12 a piece, you get into the little museum that's there. Now if you really want to see it, then you got to pay $4 more each to get on a bus, go up and see it. That's why they just charge you $20 to begin with, or $30 to begin with, instead of ding you, but they got to get this thing paid for and do what they're doing. What do you think is the biggest, Mount Rushmore or Crazy Horse Monument? How many think Rushmore is the larger monument? And how many think Crazy Horse is the larger monument? We'll answer that question for you. And how many don't even care? Okay. All right. Now, this is the Crazy Horse as we came up to it. And the old man, I mean, it was started in 1948. I was born in 1947. And the old man died, I think, in 1968 or 1988. I think the old man died in 1988. And then his wife took over. And she just died a few years ago. But she's the one that says we're going to concentrate on the face and the head, at least to have something, you know, to show while we're doing all this years and years of work. Because mind you, you got 10 years of work, and what do you got? You know, just a dull nothing. They don't even have a face at that time. And 30 years and 40 years. And you're talking now 67 years they've been working. This is 67 years labor love. Now Liz said you were up there what year?
I was there in 92.
Okay, 92. So you got 18 and 15. You got 32 years later. So this will just catch Liz up. 32 years of getting up every morning and going to work, and getting up every morning and going to work. And as you blow up, you blow 3 inches at a time of rock face. If you know what you're doing, you're that precise, you can blow 3 inches at a time to work your way back with dynamite blasting. And you were up there too a few years back. Been a few years.
Nearly 15, I think.
Well, in this particular depiction, as you're coming up, you got to drive down a side road, and we decided to go see Crazy Horse because it was about 20 or 30 miles before we got to the Mount Rushmore. So we said, while we're here, let's go do it. And then when they charge you more to get the bus, you're on a vacation, so you go pay the extra $8 and you ride the stupid bus to go see it. And even then, you don't really get to see it up close and personal, but you get closer. But as we get closer, it's kind of neat. You notice up top, there's this doohickey on the top. Actually, they run everything by a plumb bob. They run a plumb bob down on a model. They do a scale model, and the plumb bob goes out so many inches down to the tip of the nose, and they figure, okay, times 10. And so if it's 10 inches, it's 10 feet or something along that line. And so they got to blast up 10 feet here and 15 feet here and 20 feet there to get the nose made. And they do it all by plumb bob up from the top. And it's not a precise science, but it's as close as you can get. Then it's up to the sculptor to do what he's supposed to do. Now this is the depiction of the horse's head, as it's outlined in a white paint, to say that's what they're working, but they're going to work on his arms and his legs, or the arm and the rest is, this is going to be headdress. This is all going to be headdress in here. And that's yet to be. And then blast it back toward that area, but they do have the basic face. And so here's some of our depictions, and let you know we are there at the ground. Now this is some of the blasting as they're setting off some explosives, and here between 12 noon and 3 p.m. They'll be setting off these 2 explosions on that particular set date. And of course there's a blast area, you're not permitted to be in there at certain times of year. And the whole top of this, they can run their dozers up the top of this, and this is going to be his finger pointing just like this. And I wonder how that finger is going to be without breaking off, but then that's yet to come. Close up of Chief Crazy Horse. Now they came up to Crazy Horse and says, hey Indian, where are your lands now? And they said, well, my lands are where my dead lie buried. And that was his response. This is some close-ups of the construction going and the derricks working. The Bible tells us in James 5:11, as you know, we count us blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy.
Yes.
We learn out of Crazy Horse long-suffering. 59 years. 59 years. And this is all they've got to.
And I'm going.
And the old guy is going on and on and on. Because they had 8 or 10 kids, Julie. And today about 5 or 6 of the kids, I think of the 8 kids, I think 5 or 6 are still on the project, or part of the board. And they're coordinating the efforts and the construction guys. And the grandkids are now. So this is getting into this generational thing. And how'd you like Grandpa to start doing something like Noah did? And the kid says, Dad, when we start on this ark, our grandkids are going to be finishing it for us. Oh no, we'll be done before the grandkids have to be. And that's what happened with the ark. But on this situation, your kids, you're the father, now you're the mother, she carried on. And then the kids carried on, and now the grandkids. So you got 4 generations involved in this project. But we learn patience. And you talk about patience, you got to have an incredible patience. Now it was Korzak Zolkowski and Chief Standing Bear. This is at the dedication of the first blast, June 3rd, 1948. This was 67 years ago. I was 11 months, no, I was 13 months old. So I was still a little baby in a crib in Long Island, New York, when they started this project. And the Indian says the white man has built a tribute to their great presidents. We want to draw a tribute to the Indian chiefs. And so They were going to go to Borglum, who was doing Rushmore, and Borglum says, hey, you know, it took Borglum 7 years to do the first one. And then he ended up with 500 workers coming and joining him. It took him 2 years to do Jefferson. It took him a year to do Teddy. It took him a year to do Theodore. And whenever they did Jefferson, there was a crack going to go right through his nose. When we first did Jefferson, on the one side, there's too much flaw in the rock, and they had to blow all the rock to get down to the granite. And the first Jefferson was going to be on the other side of Washington, and it didn't work. And so they blew it all down to nothing. Started all over again. So they got Washington, they started Jefferson, and they're going to have this crack go right through Jefferson's nose. So what they did, they decided when they sculpted to tilt Jefferson's head back so that the crack goes right through his chin. And that's what Jefferson has, a crack in his chin. And there is a tunnel that goes back in Mount Rushmore that was supposed to be an archive tunnel where they're going to keep records, and it never developed into anything more than. And originally they're going to do all the full silhouette of clothes and all the way down to the waist of those. But World War II came, they just decided to, they kind of had the shoulder and a little bit of clothes of Washington. After that was just a head and a head and a head and a collar. And that's all they did, in the glasses. And they said after World War II, we're done with that. But still again, we've got the mystery. Which one is the bigger monument? Well, this is a close-up of our sculptor, a Polish gentleman. And this was his labor of love as he's carving out. And this, of course, is going to be the finger pointing out. This is going to be the horse. You see here the horse head here? You see here the headdress. You're going to have the headdress down in here. You go down the shoulders, the arm, and the waist. And then the horse coming out through this particular mountain.
It is going to be bigger.
So it's a pretty good size. Okay, here's your head. It's 87.5 feet.
That's bigger than
Does anybody know how big the faces are of Mount Rushmore?
60 feet.
60 feet.
Oh, they are.
So, yeah. So you've got the feather headdress is going to be 44 feet. We're 563 feet high. The arm is 263 feet, almost as long as a football field. The hand is 33 feet. So the hand and the arm is as long as a football field. You got the mane of the horse 62 feet. The horse's head's 219 feet. The whole monument 641 feet. The length of 2 football fields plus 41 feet. Huge. And this is kind of what it's going to look like when it's done. This is how far we've got. Okay, here's Mount Rushmore. Remember 60 feet, remember 87.5 feet? They say Mount Rushmore will fit into the headdress and the face of this. And you can see all the rest of this monument when they're done with it. So Mount Rushmore is just a fraction of what to do with Chief Crazy Horse's monument.
Richard, when do they anticipate it being finished?
One guy we were talking to, that's a good question. One guy came up and he says they'll never finish. You know, it's one of the guys on our bus, so we drove the bus up. They'll never finish it. They'll never finish it. You know, Liz, is one thing they forget. That is the stubbornness of man. And whenever your granddad makes a promise to an Indian chief, your people will be honored. You know, you've got a generational going from next generation, and this has become a generational thing. When will it be finished? It took the wife 20 years to finally just get the face done. And the face was just to say, let's see something, you know, permanent, so we can at least show and tell and give somebody something for their money. This one guy was thinking, oh, they just blow a few sticks of dynamite off every couple months and rake in the money and put it in their pocket and go down to Miami and celebrate. I don't think so. They're up every day, mining and blasting. This is one of the old miners' shacks at the foot of everything. And when I put this thing on Facebook, everybody had fun with this, didn't they, Glenn? This was Glenn and Sylvia's future parsonage. Air conditioned, air conditioned. You're just perfect, you know, cool in the winter and hot in the summer, cool in the summer too. I don't know, but it was a little bit
You
breezy.
gotta take the keep out sign off.
But that was it. This is the story of Crazy Horse. They think he was about 35 years of age, but he was stabbed in the back by an American soldier and died September 6, 1877, while at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, under a flag of truce. You know, isn't that noble of our soldiers to say, well, the chief comes in, flag of truce, let's go ahead. But don't forget the Lakota Indians had just got done finishing Custer off, and maybe the guy had a few of his friends and comrades that died in the Little Bighorn. But this is the Chief Crazy Horse in a complete, what it should look like,
It's gonna be beautiful.
and I'm going to say, whenever.
Jesus will come first.
Yeah.
Possibly. That is possible. But the generational blessing is that Korzak passed away in 1982, and his wife Ruth, she passed away in 2014, and she's the one that shifted focus to finish Crazy Horse's face. 6 of the Zilakowski children and some of the grandchildren carry on that family legacy. And so this is this is he and his wife, and here's the rest of the clan, all huddled up with the monument to the rear of them. Yeah, the Red Cloud of Lakotas in 1891 says, they made us many promises, more than I can remember. They never kept but one. They promised to take our land, and they took it. I know one of the Indians, when the astronauts were training out there in Arizona for moon-like landscape, that they sent a message in the Indian language, and somebody asked the Indian chief what it said, and he wouldn't tell them. And it actually said, it was a little inscription for the Indians to leave on the moon when they did the moon landing. Watch out, they'll take your land. That's what it said. Beware, they'll take your land. When we went to the moon, Morgan. In 1868, the treaty was signed by the U.S. President. I don't know who was president in 1868. 65 was Lincoln. Was this?
Great.
Was this Ulysses S. Grant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, there was another one that when Lincoln was shot, his vice president took
Johnson.
over.
Oh, yeah.
Johnson.
Andrew Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson was short-lived, but they tried to impeach him, if you remember. But then this was probably under Grant. I don't know who it was, either Johnson or Grant. But this peace treaty signed to the Lakota Indians says this: as long as the rivers run, and the grass grows, and the trees bear leaves, Pahasapa, the Black Hills of Dakota, will forever be sacred land of the Sioux Indians. Now this Chief Crazy Horse monument is a fulfillment of the promise that our president and nation broke. And again, it's general people funds, not government funds, going into this particular. This is the Black Hills, and this is not the Black Hills of Dakotas. I did not know there were Black Hills in Wyoming. But the Wyoming Black Hills and the Dakota Black Hills all look the same. When you get from a distance, they look black. They're covered with trees, but this is what they call the Black Hills. But there's one of these promises, and that's the promise of prayer, because we're talking about patience, we're talking about perseverance, we're talking about generational blessing, that the Father's vision, the promise he made to the Indian chief. It's almost like that same promise that Joshua says, choose you this day who you're going to serve. You know, whether it's the gods of your neighbors, or whether the gods of the heathen, but for me and my house, what did he say? We're going to serve the Lord. And that was a promise Joshua made. And that was a generational promise and a generational impact. Now the fourth thing is prayer. The Bible says simply, pray without ceasing. The New International Version says, pray continually. On our way up to Devil's Tower, there's a whole field of these guys.
Yeah.
And saints, they go, and there's a whole field of these prairie dogs. And Sandy says, you know, I gotta get a picture of that, gotta get a picture of that. So we've got a picture of these prairie dogs. And you know what this prairie dog is doing? He's praying. You know what he's praying for? You to give him some food. But you know what the signs say? Do not feed the prairie dogs. So, you know, these guys are praying without ceasing. Or without ceasing. But as we approach in the distance, we come across this tower of prayer. And I didn't know it, but this place was sacred to over 20 different Indian nations. And people migrate, the Indians migrate. It's almost like the Muslims going to Mecca, or the Christians going to Jerusalem. You know, they migrate, or the Catholics going to the Vatican. They come to this place as a sacred place of prayer for the Indians. And they come from Missouri and Wyoming and of course the Dakotas, but I mean they come from many, many states away. 20 nations of Indians come to this Devil's Tower. And how it got its name, it was saying the evil of the gods, and they said, okay, we're going to translate that as the Devil's Tower. Actually, it should be called the Bear's Lair, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. This, as you get close, the makeup of this particular is supposed to be a volcano. There's about 3 or 4 theories of what this Devil's Tower was, but this thing was a huge volcano, and this plug of quartz and granite came pushed up, and it got stuck and lodged in as the volcano, and then everything, the whole mountain eroded over, and it was just this old ugly blackhead that was left after everything was peeled away, and this thing was the only thing left standing. And Dan, I've never seen striations like this anywhere. The only thing that's unusual is in the middle of nowhere in Australia, a comet, meteorite,
Yes.
landed, and that thing is bigger than this Devil's Tower. Huge. And you can see it for miles. And it's like a mountain that landed from heaven and went whoop. Now, the ancients, as far as Diana, the Ephesians, they had a comet that came down, they worshipped the comet. If you know the Muslim people, they got a piece of meteorite there in Mecca, and they worshipped that stupid meteorite, and they touched the meteorite. Now, 700 of them died the other day trying to do their thing, rushing to do whatever they did here.
They made a movie concerning that tower, Close Encounters.
Oh yeah, Close Encounters of the Third Kind had the flying saucer coming down, and that's what popularized this particular tower. I didn't get a clip of the movie in here, but I did get some personal pictures. But all around this particular, there's a hiking trail. It's about 1.25 miles, mile and a half to go around it and back down.
That is a bit tall.
And this was the particular prayer tower of the Indians. And the legend is these 7 Indian girls were playing or picking berries, and they're attacked by a bear. I don't know, it was a grizzly bear.
Oh,
And they jumped up on this 3-foot-high rock, and they prayed, save us, save us, save us. They prayed to the rock, and the rock just started going shh, and grew. And finally, these little girls became 7 stars of the Pleiades. Now, the thing is about these 7 children, the 7 stars of Pleiades, then it wasn't until the last century they knew there were 7 stars in the Pleiades.
wow.
They had some knowledge of constellation before we even discovered the 7 stars of the Pleiades. But this was the Indian legend of the 7 stars. They could see 6 with naked eye. The 7th, you've got to have a Hubble telescope to find it. And but in the legend, and so the bear came up, and so the striations in the rock were from this bear trying to get up there and get those girls until they were protected and taken to heaven. Now the Bible, it says here, please do not disturb these prayer bundles and prayer cloths. And these were, the Indians will hang these prayer cloths around when they come and pray to their God or their nature God. And these are some of those prayer bundles that were there, and these particular prayer cloths. Now the Bible tells us, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm, let nothing move you, always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Now, this is the Indian chief worshiping, and this is a mountain climber climbing up this mountain. And the Indian says, this is sacred. We do not want our sacred place being desecrated by mountain climbers. So guess who they went to? All the way to the Supreme Court, and they argued this case. And the Supreme Court asked the mountain climbers that were complaining, have any mountain climbers been injured? Well, no, we haven't. Well, then there's no claim. If nobody's been hurt, there's no liability. They're looking for physical liability. So they made a compromise. For the month of June, when the Indians are there for their festivity, no mountain climbing allowed for the month of June. Now July, August through May, all the mountain climbing, if you're crazy enough to get up there. But once you get rappels up there, you got to come down on your rope 3 times to come down because you're 800 feet in the air, almost 800 feet up there. It's incredible. The thought we have when we're dealing with character, we're dealing with the qualities of leadership that God wants us to have. He wants us to have the quality of long suffering, and suffer long. He wants us to have the quality of patience. He says, remember the long suffering of Noah. He says, let's remember the patience of Job. He wants us to consider ourselves generationally, that we bless our generations to come, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren. And that's what a blessing to see grandchildren in the Lord and great-grandchildren in the Lord. This is the exciting part of living your life for Christ. And then finally prayer, where we need to pray without ceasing. We need to pray steadfastly. And prayer needs to be a part of our everyday walk with Jesus Christ. When I was at the reunion, I ran into Byron Elrod's coach. And Byron was one of my students. He was one of the youth when I was youth minister there in Loveland, Colorado. He came up to Pennsylvania for 2 years to the Bible Institute there. And we graduated with a 2-year diploma, AA. And I met his coach. He says, Coach, your student was one of my students. You were his coach in high school. I was one of his professors in Bible college. But I said, what kind of wisdom or do you want me to bring back to Byron back at the house there in Longmont, Colorado when we leave this doings? And the old coach says, tell Byron to follow your dreams. Follow your dreams. So I'm going to pass on this bit of wisdom this morning to the congregation here at Northside Christian. Follow your dreams. Whether they're big like Borglum or whether they're big like the Chief Crazy Horse Monument, or whether they're smaller dreams. I don't know what your dreams be, but follow your dreams. We're going to have Glenn have our music this time, or